All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. So glad to be with you today. It is Tuesday, and I hope you'll join me for the hour. I hope you caught yesterday's program with Arlen. I thought it was really interesting, informative. Always nice to have two voices, so you maybe get slightly different perspectives. That's what you got for, well, I don't know how many years it's been on the Hill Rising, and they've had several different teams. They had a few years ago Sagar and Crystal, and of course they left to do Breaking Points. And I thought the new team, at least the team that was on until last week, was actually better. I actually preferred Brianna Joy Gray and Robbie Suave over Crystal and Sagar. Not that I didn't like Crystal and Sagar, they were fine, but I just feel like Brianna Joy Gray brought a kind of integrity, a kind of, I don't really like the term, what is authenticity, that I didn't necessarily feel, even with Crystal, as much as I liked her, but there were times when I felt she was playing the game, she was being a journalist, in quotes, or a reporter, in quotes, or a pundit, in quotes, rather than giving you what was kind of an honest take. And I'm not saying that, or her honest take is that of a journalist. Brianna Joy Gray was not a journalist before she went into her current profession as a pundit, as a blog. What do you call it? What am I doing again? A podcaster, right? That was not what she did. She was a lawyer, and then she worked for Bernie Sanders' campaign, which I think showed her commitment, demonstrated her true commitment to progressive politics in a way that you don't see from a lot of other folks out there. So I just think she's about as good as it gets. And she got fired over the weekend, and she's been talking about that's getting a lot of attention in the media. I really wanted to discuss it because she's my favorite, besides myself. I have some issues with her, as with everyone, of course, but she's really good. And she was fired for speaking out against Israel, for being an unapologetic critic of the Israeli genocide in Gaza. She deserves a tremendous amount of credit for that. Obviously, a lot of bravery involved. I can come out here and spout whatever I want. I can say whatever I'm in my study in my house. She had a paid gig, which is great. Apparently, she was doing pretty well there. She said they gave her what she wanted, but when you are paid for playing the piper, the payer calls the tune. And they made it clear at the Hill they weren't pleased with the fact that she was honestly describing, reporting on, and ultimately taking strong issue with what Israel has been doing. And for that, she lost her position there. Now, I think it's kind of ironic. Look, she's going to still be on. She does her program, the Bad Faith, and that's why I kind of asked tongue-in-cheek, was her firing from the Hill Rising taken in bad faith? And yes, it was. I mean, it was bad faith because she's supposed to be honest. She's supposed to call it as she sees it. And not only that, it seems kind of clear in retrospect that she was set up to be discharged for, what I have to acknowledge, as big a fan as I am, somewhat petulant behavior, which was totally understandable under the circumstances. And I don't think rose anywhere near the level of being something that she should have lost her job for. But in the moment, she kind of lost it a tiny bit, I believe. And I think that was the whole goal. They were determined to make her look bad. And she didn't even look very bad, but it was just enough, I guess. She just crossed the line just enough that there was some kind of plausibility to her discharge. So we'll get right into that. Now, I center Gaza. That is what I'm all about. I'm centering the true victims of imperialism, of war, and those victims are the people in Gaza right now, the most dangerous place on the planet, the highest casualty rate anywhere. So I'm certainly not going to stop that. And you can see the headline there: 40 more killed in the past 24 hours. 120 wounded. And this is as we are hearing more reports that a ceasefire may be imminent. This is also in Al Jazeera. I showed you the Al Jazeera headline. So more from Al Jazeera here. Hamas official saying we accept the ceasefire resolution. And I saw it just before I went live that another news source, not Al Jazeera, is reporting this as well. You get a little bit sometimes of conflicting information where Al Jazeera tends to report that Hamas is receptive to negotiations. Hamas is willing to accept a ceasefire. And I believe Al Jazeera. I think Al Jazeera is very, very credible. The problem is that the Israeli media and often American media always puts the burden on Hamas to do things, and Hamas needs to accept this and Hamas needs to agree to that, when they normally have, and it's Israel that is the stumbling block. It's tough right now, though, for the Islamophobes, the anti-Palestinian, the pro-genocide side. It's tough on them because it seems that the media now is pretty clearly reporting, Hamas has said yes to the ceasefire. It's Israel that obviously is the stumbling block. Israel's obviously the problem. We just saw another 40 killed. They engage in a very, very bloody, vengeful raid over the weekend that has been reported, and I think correctly so. In and of itself, that quote rescue unquote raid may well have violated all manner of war conventions or Geneva conventions on quote civilized unquote on civilized warfare. I mean, is there such a thing? I know people always say, well, this is crazy. War is ugly. War is hell, as General Sherman said. So there aren't rules. But there are rules. You can't round people up and then shoot them. You can't tie people's hands behind their back and then, bury them in an open pit. That is not legal, even in warfare. And this war itself, I believe, is clearly illegal. There's no way it can be justified, if you want to even call it a war. The killing can be justified by some type of right of self-defense. If anyone has a right to self-defense, it's clearly the Palestinian people. So Israel's actions throughout this Nakba have been ugly, wrong, genocidal, and therefore illegal. You can see here Blinken just earlier today said it's on Hamas. It's on Hamas to decide about Gaza's ceasefire plan, which is ridiculous because Hamas, has already said we're good with it. And if Israel had any intention of some kind of good faith entry into a ceasefire, then I don't think they would have just killed another 40 people all over Gaza. They would have killed over 280 people just on Saturday alone, most of those, the great majority, when they were involved in a rescue effort. And I put the quotes there a lot. I know it sort of sounds a little jarring maybe because it's their words, it's their hasbara, it's their propaganda, the way the Israelis describe their actions, obviously always putting their spin on it to make it look like it's less reprehensible, less ugly, less wrong than it really is. I do want to, and we will talk now, let's talk about BRIAHNA Joy Gray. I center the plight of the Palestinian people. And so did this woman. That is why she has found herself, at least right now, without a nice job. And listen, would I go work over there if they offered me the position? Of course I would. I mean, I'd take it, in a heartbeat. Not that they ever will. But it would be nice, you get paid to say it. But the problem is, again, they have a lot, they tell you in the end, and I thought this was interesting. We're going to maybe learn a little bit about the way it works there if I got my clips up correctly. I hope I do, because she's going to go into a little bit about how the production was done. And I'm thinking, wow, they don't just have one producer at the They have a team of producers. She has a co-host. She had to do a lot of work, no question, but it makes life a lot easier when you have a group of people, they're getting stories. Even in the old radio days, we did all our stories ourselves. It would have been nice. It would have been nice. All right, we're going to get to two places where Briahna Joy Gray did interviews. One, her own program, which is Bad Faith. So again, was this in bad faith? I think it's ironic or interesting. I won't say ironic. It's interesting that on Bad Faith, she has, it's not even like they're co-hosts. It's like they're interviewing her, which I thought was kind of odd because it's her program. But let's see if we can get into this. Well, that'll be the second video. Let's show her with Glenn Greenwald first. So here she is with Glenn discussing the specific incident. And there's a brief clip. Maybe it would have been nice to have a longer one, but I didn't have the time or the opportunity to put it together. But here she is talking with Greenwald about what happened on Friday. Or Thursday, I should say. This was Thursday. She didn't do programs Friday. So here she is with Greenwald. We'll get that video up for you as well. Just how it was recorded video. Let's see if we can get it. Here we go. Let's go.
Yeah, exactly. It could be your, you should change your Twitter name to that. But, clearly the fact that you are out there, that you do have this kind of platform in corporate media where you've been using it to be so vocal in your criticism of Israel has really made you public enemy number one. And by
the way, that is so accurate. I was really taken with how many right-wing sites and even some progressives were just ready to go with this story, and kind of similar headlines too. We'll get into that. Well, let me just show you now. What the heck? Let's just look at that now for just a minute. You can see how they're just, and this is from YouTube, but a lot of headlines, 4 different sources, and there were tons more. I just pulled these out. But you can just see this. They're all ready to go 4 days ago, 5 days ago, right after she was fired from the Hill. Because these media outlets, as Greenwald said, that are controlled by pro-Israel voices, pro-Israel media, she's the enemy. She's someone who's telling the truth and on a site that has some credibility. Look, I like to think I have credibility. I know for myself I do. But unfortunately, and I think this is a real problem, if you media that has kind of a legacy, a reputation, is just automatically accorded so much more respect by millions, tens of millions of people. And so if it's not in the New York Times, many people just won't believe it happened. It's amazing, or they will never even know it happened. It's quite extraordinary. I'll talk to people who are very well informed. I'll mention a story, but it wasn't in the New York Times. Oh, I didn't know about that. I wasn't aware of that. And then even when you make them aware of it, it doesn't mean as much to them, right? For example, the fact that the claims that Hamas weaponized sexual violence on October 7th have been pretty much all debunked. None have been proven. There are no eyewitnesses to support those claims, nor forensic evidence. And that is simply not known by so many people who just read the New York Times, because the New York Times never came clean on that. The problem for the Zionists, the reason that Briahna Joy Gray was a problem is because she was on a legacy media channel, The Hill, that many people say, okay, it's The Hill, it's credible. If it's done by The Hill, I'm going to believe it. And she was unsparing in telling you the truth about Israel. And this simply was not acceptable to so many pro-Israel people, individuals, groups that have a lot of money, a lot of influence, a lot of media control either by virtue of their ownership of it or by virtue of their advertising it. They're helping fund it. And this just simply, and not just media, powerful institutions didn't like what she was saying either. She's giving a voice to the pro-Palestine protesters. All of that together made her just absolutely a lightning rod anathema. And so you can see a lot of different media outlets there just poised to go. And they're kind of connected too. It's interesting. Ami's house, Ami is a right-wing Israeli filmmaker. Briahna Joy Gray fired for dehumanizing Jews. Never did that. Did not dehumanize Jews. This is the big issue. Was she really rolling her eyes at sexual assault? And that's an Israeli media, Sky News Australia, a Rupert Murdoch, media outlet, and then New York Post, also Murdoch owned, all going after. And there's plenty of others, but I just thought it was really interesting. They were all just prepared to go. They were raring to attack Briahna Joy Gray because she's human, because she cares about other people, because she can't be silent or mute her outrage at the horrors, at the war crimes committed by Israel. And that made her not expendable. That made her a target that had to be eliminated. So more from her interview with Greenwald.
As you say, that really escalated when this very short snippet of an interview that you conducted with, I believe she's a sister of a hostage in Gaza. Is that correct? She's the sister of a hostage in Gaza.
That's
and it was
correct.
at the very end of the interview, so there was no context to it, but they tried to claim that you were essentially mocking and rolling your eyes at a rape victim. Let's show this video that caused so much disturbance.
I want to say, not a rape victim. The woman that Briahna Joy Gray is talking to here is the sister of a hostage. And we'll hear a little bit more about her and how it happened that Briahna Joy Gray interviewed her on the Hill Rising. But her last, I think it was her last appearance, right? It would have been. Maybe she had a couple of, maybe there were a couple of other segments she taped after this. But I believe this is her last day at the Hill Rising on Thursday.
Thank you, me too. And I really hope that you specifically will believe women when they say that they got hurt.
All right.
All right, so she rolled her eyes there. She does. She kind of looks down. The woman she was interviewing again, the daughter or the sister of a hostage, by the way, it's June 4th. So I guess it wasn't immediately that Briahna Joy Gray was terminated, but very shortly thereafter. And it was a strange comment for her. I hope you'll believe women, because the discussion had been about her sister who was being held hostage, not about the sexual assaults that allegedly occurred on October 7, perpetrated by Hamas, but have simply not been proven. And then the sister brings up this issue saying, I hope you'll believe women, which is such a completely dishonest trope. I mean, it's just not that Briahna Joy Gray has never questioned women or is less inclined to believe them than anyone else. But hey, in fact, it wasn't even really, it's so dishonest because there weren't women who said, I was raped. There just weren't. It just didn't happen. In fact, there were families that said, actually, my daughter, she was killed. It was awful. I saw her body. She was murdered, but she wasn't raped. There was no evidence of that. We could see from the way her body, was found. She hadn't been raped. So the idea you're supposed to believe women is irrelevant to the allegations of rape on October 7 because there weren't women who said they were raped.
The sister of a hostage. And it was at the very end of the interview, so there was no context to it, but they tried to claim that you were essentially mocking and rolling your eyes at a rape victim. Let's show this video that caused so much disturbance.
Thank you, me too. And I really hope that you specifically will believe women when they say that they got hurt.
All right.
I've
Thanks
heard
for
a lot
joining.
of
So
that.
she does.
Stick around. More Rising coming up next.
All right. So she did slightly show her, I guess, disdain for that line of talk. Like somehow this woman who came on the program is going to sort of call me out for not believing women. And, you know, she's obviously like, what, that had nothing to do with this conversation. I haven't said I don't believe women. It's not really relevant. It's just something I'm being attacked for. It wasn't an ideal way for Briahna Joy Gray to respond. It really was. A better way would have been something like, of course I believe women. I feel, you know, and I again and reiterate, please, I'm happy that you're, we wish you and your sister the best. I hope that she's released. That would have been fine. But, so yeah, she showed that she was a little bit sick and tired of the way that she is being presented as some kind of a anti-Semite or pro-Hamas murderers presentation, which is just false. This is a really serious loss. Briahna Joy Gray is one of the, again, very, very few true pro-human voices out there who consistently centers, and she doesn't always get it right, and I've taken issue with her, in the past. There's a little bit of a DEI thing going on there. And when I have a problem with DEI, whatever, diversity, equity, and inclusion, where I have a problem with that is when we make excuses for certain people. We say it's okay, we're going to relax our standards, or you're going to get admitted to our institution based on your innate characteristics as opposed to your achievements or your aptitude, what you've done. That is where I have a problem with it. And I think there are times when she does that a little bit. But I don't think there's anyone else in media who has demonstrated as much concern for individuals, as much concern for human rights, as much of a recognition that our system is so off the rails because of the power, the influence that just a tiny number of extremely rich people have, and because they have it, because they're such a skewed distribution of wealth. So she's right there, and this is a terrible loss. And in a way, and I wish it weren't a loss. Not that, I wish she were still on the Hill, but I don't think it should matter. Briahna Joy Gray's voice is still going to be out there. And it should be just as influential as ever. But it won't be. It just won't be, because, as I mentioned, she's not going to be on this legacy media channel. And yeah, to be fair, the production values won't be the same. Just like on my program, the production values aren't the same. Catholic Jack reached out to me. He said, "Hey, I want to be just like you. I want to do what you do." And this is very rudimentary. I'm not saying I'm not going to put down what I do. I think it's, good, but it doesn't have all the bells and whistles that a program like The Hill can provide. And she'll be able to. She does more on her show, due diligence or bad faith, than I do. On mine, she has more resources available to her. Obviously, bigger audience. Which, by the way, brings me to, please subscribe. You got to subscribe. Need a bigger audience. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell everyone you know. You got to watch Halitics. I think it's pretty much at this point a not de-rigor, right? De-rigor. Yeah, I guess it's de-rigor. Is that what that means? Like it's required? Yeah, de-rigor viewing. All right, let's get to her video right here, explaining a little bit about, what is it? I don't know, 419. I think this is the setup, how she was, was she set up? Was Briahna Joy Gray set up? We'll hear from her right now.
Can you just find a normal guest? So about a week ago, the producer slacks me, and this is where I knew it was all going to go left. She says, a hostage family reached out to me and wants you to interview his sister. Me specifically. Not she wants to come on and talk to you and Robbie. Me specifically. wants you to interview his sister. I knew that she was going to do what so many of these other Zionist guests have done, which is try to personalize it. It was a setup.
Yeah.
And I told Joanne, I told the producer, this is a setup. And, you know, are you looking out for me? The answer is obviously no. So when she started to do that at the end of the interview, like the writing was on the wall. That was the last segment we had filmed of that day. I came off the set and I was furious. And I was like, this is exactly what I knew was going to happen. Your job is to protect me. I'm, you know, protect the people who work for you at this institution, not basically take solicitations from the audience of people who want to line up to throw tomatoes at me on the internet because they want to spread some rape hoax lie.
All right. So she's right 100%. And yet at the same time, this was an opportunity for her, knowing in advance, as she clearly did, that the Hill was trying to put her on the spot, trying to get rid of her, trying to silence a pro-Palestine voice, where she could have simply, you know, conducted it as though, wow, you've gone through a terrible ordeal. You know, there are ways she could have injected her own perspective, which is, I'm sure you are just wishing no other family would ever have to undergo what you're undergoing. I'm sure your heart goes out, your sympathies to all the hostage families, all the hostages, whether they're Israeli or Palestinian, right? She could have also drawn her out, you know, be very sympathetic. Like, you know, I feel so bad for what you went through. How do you feel about Palestinians? Has this changed your view of Gazans? Are you just, you know, because I'll tell you, if a group of people, even if I thought their cause was righteous, if they did something like this to my family, I would be so upset. I don't think I could, you know, view them as human beings. I think maybe I would attribute to the entire group. Do you blame all Palestinians for what happened to your sister, or do you just blame the perpetrators? Do you feel like what Israel's doing now to Gaza is justified by what was done to your family? You know, I mean, those are all questions she could have asked. I think might have diffused, well, it might not have diffused it, it might have really pissed her off, but I think if she had presented those questions in a kind of with the appearance of empathy and compassion, it might have made her look better, made BRIAHNA look better. I don't know, but obviously the goal there was to embarrass her, was to make her look bad, and they were able to get rid of her. And you again see that the media was all ready to go, right? I mean, they were all set with their headlines. You know, so it is what it is. It shouldn't matter in terms of BRIAHNA Gray's credibility or her influence, but it will, and that's what is unfortunate, because we need influential, pro-people, pro-human, pro-peace voices, and she is one of the few in there who had a really good-sized audience, and she shamed people. She made them feel bad about themselves, as they should have. And I think that may have been her, ultimately her undoing. All right, let's get a little more from this interview, because I do want to center Briahna Joy Gray now, a victim of, is it fair to say, Zionist forces? I think it is. I think it really is. By the way, just to show you, so again, you know, I was talking about production values and the Hill. They have this really nice set. You can see all the, you know, there's such differences, right? So her bad faith set isn't nearly as fancy. It's just like a Zoom call with three. I think that's a Zoom call. I don't know. Maybe it's Google Meet like what I do. Pretty similar in some ways. So pretty rudimentary. And, you know, the production values matter. If you're on a fancy set like they had the Hill, it's going to make a difference. Also, again, why is she at the bottom of that image? I guess it's just the way it was set up. But those are her buddies from Due Dissidents helping her with the program. But, you know, I thought it was a little strange on bad faith that that's how she decided to go forward with it, but what have you.
How much the whole basis of defending Israel's behavior and the Zionist project more broadly is so inextricable at its core from Islamophobia.
All right, so I'll stop it there. I'm going to play a little more. This is, I believe, the real reason. They used that interview and the very, very small, minimal eye roll. That was the pretext that he'll use to fire her. So clearly it was in bad faith. That's not why they fired her. They fired her because she's points out, as she did here, and she's done this over and over again, that there's really a direct line, she says, between the killing in Gaza and Islamophobia. And I don't, I think it's more just there are people there, we don't want them there. They're not Jewish. We don't want them there. If they were Christian, they wouldn't be getting killed in such numbers. But there have been a few Christians killed. But they wouldn't be killed in such numbers because there would be such outrage from Europe and from Israel's allies. And if Israel were killing Christians, then the U.S. simply could not support it. But in this case, they're killing Muslims, so it's okay. But again, I don't think it's quite animus against Muslims, which is what Islamophobia is. It's just there's a group of people in the way, they're expendable, we'll kill them. We'll eradicate them. That's what Israel's doing.
Like when I was sitting there in that room.
So she's discussing this, Briahna Joy Gray is discussing a sort of a panel that she did, a debate over whether Israel is justified, whether it's okay what Israel did. During that debate, and they were really some hateful people. I'll play a clip from it in a moment. Really ugly stuff. And so she's discussing it.
There's this argument that I ran off the stage and called everybody racist. No, I did make a comment. I made a comment about how, frankly, appalled I was by the open Islamophobia that was being expressed both on the panel and in the reactions from the audience.
Right.
At one point, there was I was saying some statistic about the number of children who had died or something like that, and I heard a cackle, like a singular, audible cackle from a woman sitting down.
It's amazing what she's saying. You just see this over and over. Talking to the Zionists, talking to the pro-Israelis. They don't care. It doesn't matter to them how many children are killed. I remember talking on this program with Dr. Dana, I believe, we talked about this, and she said, well, they're going to be future terrorists. Yeah, they are, because you're killing their families. You're killing their siblings, their brothers and sisters. So yeah, I don't think that makes it okay to kill them. It's sort of like in The Godfather, when when he's a little boy, his father is killed by the local mafia chieftain in Sicily, and the chieftain orders the future Godfather, Vito Corleone, to come to his house where he's going to be killed because Don Cheech knows, the chieftain knows, that if he doesn't kill the young boy, he will grow up to take vengeance, right? So he's going to kill the boy before he can. And that's what Israel's, I guess, saying now. Well, we've killed a whole bunch of you, so we got to kill a whole bunch more.
Down in the front row, and I just turned and looked at her. It was weird to be so proximate to people who had absolutely no shame about having views that are so essentialist and so out of step with what we consider to be polite in society. And to just...
that kind of goes with what Friedman was saying, right? In that article that Arlen and I discussed yesterday, Have We Lost Our Moorings as Society? He kind of is more focused, is Friedman, and I don't really agree with this, on these kind of sort of moments. He's like sort of tells, right? Not a massacre itself, but the fact that Trump doesn't even have any shame about the payoff to Stormy Daniels, the hush money payoff, that to him proves how we've lost our moorings as a society. To me, that was kind of not real strong evidence. But what Briahna Joy Gray is perfect evidence of this, tragically perfect, that there just simply is a lack of any sympathy. There's certainly no empathy, no ability to put yourself into the shoes of the people that Israel is eradicating, is killing, is bombing, is blowing up, is turning into orphans or leaving without children.
Look at them in the eye and them to look you back with absolutely no shame. I came home. This is going to sound, again, very melodramatic. I'm sorry. I'm feeling a little confessional today.
All right, so I'll stop it there. We don't need to hear a confession, but I do want to play this one guy who really sickened me, Daniel Moynihan. And it was a weird panel she was on in, I think, Brooklyn just a few weeks ago. It was kind of weird because I've heard people say, oh, this is sort of a group of, or this is kind of the progressive movement needs to take stock if this is what it's going to be. These are its people. I got to stop playing around with that. So if these are its people, but they weren't progressive. This guy, he ain't no progressive. Daniel Moynihan is he related to, no, it's Michael Moynihan, right? Daniel Moynihan was a senator. And Daniel Moynihan had a brother, Michael Moynihan, who was kind of a libertarian. Daniel Patrick Moynihan, the New York senator, was good in some ways, but not in others. Not in others. So here's BRIAHNA Joy Gray one more time. And actually, this is more from that conference where you'll see this guy Moynihan. And he really represents to me a society that this person has a voice. This represents a society that's lost its bearings, that's lost its humanity, that isn't
Western democracy
isn't decent
but also,
anymore.
If you let in any more, then they'll rip us to shreds because they're savages, unlike Danes.
I suspect, and this is the weird conversation that we're having when people talk about Zionism these days. Incredible to me that I'm like, I thought this was a settled matter. Zionism is about this creation of the state of Israel.
So it's like he's really upset. It's settled, right? Israel is there. That's the end of it. We're not going to talk about Israel repressing, suppressing, persecuting, oppressing, killing Palestinians. It's over. Israel just is there, period. The end of story. And and we're not going to examine its actions, its activities.
Was created. Are you a Zionist or are you an anti-Zionist? What I'm trying to figure out is if my opponents here believe that the state of Israel should exist at all. And if we should wipe a UN member nation off the map, because...
So such apocalyptic terms, should we wipe them off the map? Should they exist at all? So the point he's making, obviously, is either Israel exists in its present form, the Jewish state, with a bunch of millions and millions of Palestinians, Muslims mostly, but not exclusively, not part of it, not included, on the periphery. Second tier people at best. That's Israel. That's the way it is, he's saying. That's the end of it. Or else you want to eradicate it. It should cease to exist. Wipe it off the map.
That is effectively what right of return is.
Well, right of return, and to me, right of return means you're part of the state of Israel. You're a citizen. That's the end of it. Maybe you don't get to go back to the exact same plot of land you owned, your family owned, your grandparents, your ancestors owned. Maybe we can't do that. You can't put the toothpaste all the way back in the tube. But right of return means you're a citizen. You're part of this country, full and equal, just as much, say, as anyone else, because every human life is precious and every human life deserves equal rights under the law and some form of true economic justice. And this guy doesn't get it. And yet he has a voice, yet he's on that stage, yet he acts with the contempt for people who do get it. That's a society that's lost its moorings.
Right of return does not take 7 million refugees, and this number expands. These are people who have never been in the area, have resettled other places. And Benny Morris's book is far more nuanced than that is allowing, that there were people who were expelled, there were people that were forced out by their own side, etc. Benny Morris.
And who cares, right? So what? Well, it's too bad. Sucks to be them. That's his attitude. That's a person like that who has an audience, who's invited to the on stage for these types of debates. That is a society that's not a decent, caring one. All right, 240-242-5646. Would love to talk to you. Please call in 240-242-5646. I have not actually checked. I should check. That's why I'm looking over to my right. My chat. So let's see if there's anybody chatting. I should pop it out. Yes, I sent you. Your gain is a little hot and your S's are clipping. All right. Well, I will try to reduce that. Maybe your speakers too, but I get that. All right, I will work on that. Thank you, Shade, for your comment on that. I should have checked that earlier. I can also probably just reduce the gain just a little bit. I'm going to drop that gain down to a little bit. So we'll try to get rid of that clipping. I think when I start talking loudly is what happens. So our society that's lost its bearings, lost its moorings, however term you want to use it, I don't think Trump is a symptom. This is the example of a society that's lost its moorings. A very highly reputable, very highly regarded Big Ten university there. We're not going to hire this professor because he called what is a textbook case of genocide a textbook case of genocide. He was being hired to, by the way, fulfill a position at their genocide studies school. They have like a school there that's designed to look at that, at people killing each other, wiping each other off the map. So the professor that they were hiring, they won't hire now because there was a lot of protests, or they may not. They put a pause on it because he described accurately what's going on. Who else do you want to be your professor of genocide studies but someone who's talking about what Israel's doing as genocide? Seems to me that's the obvious person for that job. But they're not going to get it, or probably not. We'll see. That to me is a society that's lost its moorings. I talked last week about Fauci, right? And the rapturous reception that the Democrats, specifically, my least favorite one, Jamie Raskin, maybe he's not my least favorite, but man, he is such a phony. He is such a BSer. He is such a grandstander. And the smarminess just turns my stomach more than anything. So there you go. Just little puppy, little cute little beagle being kept in a cage. And you see the headline there that Fauci funded yet another cruel beagle experiment. And it's true. So this is something the Democrats couldn't be bothered to talk about. And I know there's been, in fact, we talk about the cruelty, right, that you saw on display from that journalist Michael Moynihan, the utter lack of any recognition of the basic humanity of the Palestinian people. So you have a situation where the head of NIAID, I guess it's National Institute for Allergy and Infectious Disease or something like that. I don't know. It's part of, I thought it was NAID, but it's actually NIAID, which Fauci ran at NIH, National Institute of Health. And you see plenty of Dems, plenty of Raskin supporters, because they hate Trump so much. They've been trained to hate Trump so much that because Fauci is perceived as an enemy of Trump, he's your friend. He's your ally, right? The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Fauci is the enemy of Donald Trump. Ergo, he's my friend. Washington Post and Fauci got a lot of criticism from the right, Marjorie Taylor Greene going after him for funding those experiments on beagles back in 2021. So I decided to look into this. And the Washington Post fact checker are doing their best to kind of cover Fauci. Can't quite exonerate him. No. As they say, documents obtained by the animal rights group show that they weren't fully transparent. They didn't tell you about these cruel experiments on dogs, and they describe them. The Post actually gives you some real, they quote, but they acknowledge this is what was going on. And, people think, oh, it's, dogs, it's not people. This is a measure of what we are as a society, whether we support genocide, which obviously is I'm speciesist. I put humans above other animals. I'm a human after all. But what kind of a person? I mean, they say that serial killers torture animals. One of the ways you know if someone's going to be a serial killer when they're a kid is if they torture animals, if they kill animals when they're children. So one of the experiments that NIH funded back in, for quite a while, but certainly when Fauci was in charge of the NIAID, were these where they would inject these beagle puppies with these diseases and then kill them. They cut out their vocal cords. They say, oh, because it was painful for the dogs to bark. Well, why do you think they were barking? Because they were in excruciating pain. And that was only one of other studies that the Fauci NIH funded. In Tunisia, they kept the dogs in cages where they were exposed to sandflies every night. These diseased sandflies that would give the puppies, fatal diseases, and then they would be ultimately euthanized, killed, and dissected. This is what Dr. Fauci was doing, this hero. Well, let's find out what he was. Let's listen to our good friend Jamie Raskin explaining what a great American hero Fauci is. This guy who is approving experiments on dogs. It's really awful. And again, we've lost our way. That's the only way I can possibly even, or we've lost our moorings, as friend Friedman says. So here he is. Here's our good friend Jamie Raskin extolling the wonderful dog torturer.
Crimes, much less high crimes and misdemeanors attributable to Joe Biden.
First, he has to start though by going on and on about how the Republicans are off base, how wrong they are, how they're dishonest.
He is an honorable public servant who has devoted his entire career to the public health and the public interest, and he is not a comic book supervillain.
Well, I wouldn't call him a comic book supervillain, but he did approve experiments that were cruel and inhumane and painful and led to the ultimate killing of dogs after they had been deliberately contracted with diseases. And you can see it right there. Final funding decisions were made with the concurrence of Dr. Fauci. What the Post tries to do to excuse him is say, well, it's silly to blame him for all of this. I mean, he was the head of the department. He had to approve what? Thousands were approved. Well, did he send out the message? Was there a memo? Hey, I don't want experiments on animals. If you're going to take a living creature and you're going to be torturing it, you're going to be causing pain to it, you're going to be using it as a guinea pig, literally or figuratively, then I want to know about it. I want to know why. I want to know if there's a better way to do it, if there's a less painful way to do it. I want to know whether this is really likely to lead to to some kind of breakthrough for human health. Did he say that? Did he let people know that? Or was it just basically a rubber stamp for any experiment? Did you think about asking that question, Raskin? Because I don't think you did. I don't think you did. You just said he was this honorable, decent public servant who dedicated his whole life to improving human health. This is a society that's lost its moorings. This is a perfect example of that. The best, the brightest, the most prestigious doctors, scientists, researchers, they go to work at a place which conducts experiments on beagles because they're conveniently sized and they're docile. Is it because they're, like humans? And if a disease that causes pain on a beagle can be cured in the beagle, it'll probably also work on humans? Not in the least. Not in the least. Dogs are not simplified versions of humans. The failure rate, at least when it comes to Alzheimer's drug treatment, is not close to 100%. So these experiments don't lead to breakthroughs. They don't help people. They cause tremendous pain on animals. And the Democrats are totally good with it. In fact, they praise, they laud, they applaud the man who approved them. All right, one other quick story before I go. I know it's been an hour. I just wanted to talk briefly about this story as well. What's happening in Europe with these far-right parties. And Arlen brought this up, and he's kind of concerned about it. I understand why. So this is a June 11 story. You don't have the date up there, but it is June 11. I'll make sure you can see it. The far-right did really well. And I guess is it Marine Le Pen, who's the head of that party there in France? She could become prime minister. And Arlen's very worried. A lot of you are worried. I think it's a bad thing. I'm not happy about it either, but I don't have any, but I think it's, but Macron, I mean, is he any better? Why would you think that? Why would you see the reason that these far right parties are coming up? The reason they're gaining popularity is because the neoliberal ascendancy in Europe has been so bad. Look, this is from the Washington Post last week. Until now, the West had ruled out sending troops to Ukraine. France's Emmanuel Macron has other ideas. Right, Macron has talked about sending troops, French boots on the ground. That has not gone over well. Macron raised the retirement age in France. That has not gone over well. If you don't stand with workers, you will lose power. If Social Democrats, if the Labor Party, if the Democratic Party in the United States doesn't stand with working people, then it will lose power and extremists will rise. But does it even matter? Because if you're against working people, as the Democratic Party is, if you're for boots on the ground in Ukraine, as, I don't know, Macron is not a socialist. I guess he's a conservative. I'm not sure his party. If you're for boots on the ground, then you're not a centrist. You're, in this case, a neocon. And he's a pro-war, pro-corporate French president. That's who Macron is. And that's why it's called the Renaissance Party. That's why the right is doing very well and may take power. And I understand why you'd be afraid of that. But if you don't stand for justice, if you want peace, I'll say it this way. If you want peace, if you don't want all that internal division, all that dissension, You want to have a society where we get along, then you have to fight for justice. And we don't have a party. We don't have parties in this country. And in Europe, they may have multi-party systems, but the ascendant parties are not fighting for justice. We're going to lose everything.